All right, so diving into the tool itself. So real quick, when you open up the tool, you get two choices for now. The first is the most ideal, which requires you to be logged into a Gmail account. So if you don't have one, you can quick create one. They're free to do, and you can use it just for this. This one asks you to create a copy of the tool, and then from there you have your own version and you can start making edits. So you can't edit the one I sent out, but you can edit this one. And so if you don't have an access link to that, I can send that out through the chat here. So once you make a copy, you can edit it so you don't harm the original. And from there, you can make various copies depending on how many projects you have going. The sky's the limit, so feel free to do that. One of the benefits of this too is by doing it on the Google Sheet as opposed to downloading it, is it will maintain the integrity of the GreenStar functioning tool if you want to use that as well. The other option, as you can see up here, is head up to the file, download, and then download as a Microsoft Excel. If you download this and you prefer Excel and staying off Google Sheets, that's fine. You can use it that way. It'll work just fine for you. And the only downside to that is, two downsides actually, is that currently you can manipulate the formulas. So if you accidentally make a mistake, you can break those formulas until we fix that issue. So you can maybe on your own accord try to lock them. The other issue is it does break the functionality of the GreenStar program, which is currently only built in the Google Sheets for now. So that is the downside to using the download function, but you're more than welcome to do that as well. Okay, so when you first get into this thing, tab over to the first tab on the bottom left, details. And there's a lot of stuff here, but really the only thing that you really need to pay attention to now to try this out is the number of bedrooms, because the number of bedrooms is what's going to drive the predicted water usage of a home, and it'll estimate the number of occupants in the home. The number of occupants is estimated at the number of bedrooms plus 1, which is how most tools do it. So when you put the number of bedrooms, or when you're designing a new construction project, this might, help you consider how big the house is and right-sizing the house. You can insert the number of bedrooms, and then from there it will tell you, what your estimated water usage is based on, standard code construction without any, special water considerations for your local code, and what the house will be. And then from there, you can fill out the rest of the details, or you can zip down and skip the workbook tab, that's for GreenStar, and then head over to the water score tab. So once you get into the water score tab, you're going to see column B at the top there, baseline in gallons of water per year. So these are the estimates we've come up with based off of the research, based on the number of bedrooms in the house. And so you will see this is where each device gets its assigned usage, based on the data we have. Now the outdoor usage has a placeholder in it of 1, and we'll get to that soon. The next column on D, or otherwise named enter average flow rate of installed or proposed devices. This is where you can enter in what it is that what was done to the project, or what it is you plan to do, or utilize it as a design tool to design down lower water usage in each of these areas. One thing to note is that everything highlighted in green are the only areas you should be changing any numbers in, and try to avoid changing numbers somewhere else. The other thing to note is on the well, we'll get into that in a second here. So, but that's something to think about. All right, so let's get into the actual tool itself. So I'm going to pop this up here and have my screen share activated. So you'll see again, this is where you're going to manipulate the numbers, and then the score will start popping up. So for toilets, one thing to know, and one thing to know with all of these, is that you're going to be taking the average. So if you've got 2, 3, 4 different bathrooms in the house, and they've got different flow rates in them, then you're going to average those together. And the same goes for multifamily housing. If you've got, if you're planning to certify several units, then, you know, if you've got some units with a different flow rate and some with another, then for now, what we're doing is just having you average those together. And then the thing for dual flush, and I forgot to bring up my calculator here, but I can do a little side formula here, I think, is for dual flush, let's say you've got your average 1.28, and then you got your other one, which is 1.6 for the high flow. You're going to have the 1.28 multiplied by 2 for the low flow on the dual flush, whatever it happens to be. And then that's going to be added to the high flow. And then that's going to be divided out by 3. And so that's how you're going to get, and then a round up, of course. So that's how you're going to get your dual flush numbers. So the low flow is what we anticipate being used 2/3 more times than the high flow. Is really how these you know, these dual flush systems work. So let's just for fun use that number, 1.38, thinking it's kind of your worst case toilet, right? In the new era of low flow devices, your worst case toilet is kind of your 1.8 low, 1.6 high dual flush system. That's kind of where we're at now. So you can see right here, boom, already in a house like this, here's what your projected savings are going to be, and then what your you know, usage is going to be in the toilet, you know, with this kind of dual flush system. Okay, and then let's say showers, 1.75, boom, knocks that down, and now all of a sudden you're scoring a 1 out of 10. So remember, this is out of 10, 1 through 10, 10 being a zero water system, or zero water home. Bathroom, you know, let's get kind of aggressive there on the 0.5s. Very cool, use them all the time, they work great. Kitchens, you know, we see them standard down to 1.8 now. And then we've got clothes washers and dishwashers. And I do want to make a note on these because a lot of times you might walk away from the project with the client, you know, not having a clothes washer yet, or maybe this is a spec build and then the clients have to supply their own clothes washer. In that case, you're just going to have to assume the worst, that they're not going to be getting an Energy Star clothes washer, unless there's some kind of incentive in the area that, you know, behooves people to always do this, and you can show us some data that they always do. We're willing to accept that. That's great. But until then, you're going to make a worst case scenario assumption on the clothes washer, assuming, you know, you walk away from the house and don't hand this off to the client to finish it. The same goes for the dishwasher, which is kind of rare not to install a dishwasher. But again, two things with the dishwasher: you're going to either keep that way if you're not sure they're going to install their own, or if the project has no dishwasher, you're actually still going to keep that number in there for the time being until we figure out what to do with it. Interestingly, some of the data from the research study, we saw that there wasn't, there's been a lot of people say that dishwashers save water. According to their research, they're saying they didn't necessarily do that. So anyway, in the meantime, we're going to have you just leave that number in there, and then when you know, if you want to submit it, you can make a note on the dishwasher. Now the leaks, so, you know, in their study, they showed a lot of homes have leaks, and they kind of break down where those are at. And so even new homes have been found to have leaks due to poor plumbing install, believe it or not. So we're going to always assume that there are leaks. We're always assuming there are leaks. And so this comes pre-populated with the leaks being broken out by a percentage. So once you go through and have the leaks tested, and you can go into our manual and see the details on that. There's kind of the good, better, best approach. There's sort of the plumber does the blowout, right, where they take the water out of the system and then pressurize it to 120 psi, twice as much as what you want the system to be. And then they detect if there's any leaks and then go check for them. and then the plumber can write up a report on that, or the rater does it, or you can just come in with a pressure gauge and hook it up to the outside spigot, faucet, and then wait a half an hour, don't use any water, and then also check the water meter and then see if the pressures went down or the water meter changed. That's kind of the other way you can do that, as far as just knowing if there are leaks, not necessarily know where they are. But let's say you go through and you remediate any leaks or find there are none, you know, boom. So, you know, this is how your score will come back to you. Now, this score will also go in the reverse direction. It'll go above 10 and go into the negatives if you make a mess up on these buttons. So again, this is just very early beta version 1. There's no safeguard in here to stop it from going off in a crazy direction. Let's say I put in 40,000 here, you know, and then we've got a -6. So there's no such thing as a -6 on water score. So you just know there's you've got an error somewhere. If this isn't between 0 and 10, then you know you've got an error somewhere in the system. So the other thing to note is, this is cool. We've kind of got just a breakdown of your particular project visually on where water is being used, and then afterwards, when it's all said and done, you know, again, what the percentage makeup of where water is being used. And this kind of helps you figure out where to put your money, right, and to tackle where you want to go after reduction if you're going after the biggest water using device. All right, so let's go back to so before we move on to outdoor water usage, gray water and rainwater in the next part, let's see if there are any questions here on that. So there was one question: is can the system be used outside of the U.S.? So the data in our system really is based off of studies in the United States, and then I know in that study there were, I think, some Canadian households that also were involved. But yeah, anybody can use this. I just know that water use practices outside of the U.S. and Canada and living situations and styles may be significantly different. So you know, you just have to notice that, you know, you have to take that into consideration. But yeah, it can be used. And then how does the tool account for water usage by water softener? So yeah, that's a fantastic question. You know, we're actually, you know, we do know that there's the older water softeners that, you know, just use a lot of water. Even if you didn't use any water, they have to run kind of at nighttime when you don't want to be drinking water. And then the more newer on-demand ones run. However, you know, in the research and studies that we read, you know, we didn't see any significant issues or even, you know, a blip. I mean, if you looked at the categories, there was like an other category of like 3%. So it's just a minor blip on the radar of what we want to go after. But however, I would like to see, you know, like eventually there'll be a button that says, are you on outdoor water usage as far as well water, and if so, okay, then you know, then you're going to have a section here for your water softener, and that's going to use some water, and you might want to consider you know, an on-demand non-electric one. I actually heard those ones are pretty cool because they have a catchment system on them that, you know, when the pump fails, sand comes piling up and nearly destroys everything on its way in your plumbing system. So this water softener catches that sand and prevents your plumbing system from getting laced with sand. So that's kind of cool too. But anyway, yeah, it's a great question. But unfortunately, you know, we're not at this point considering water softeners, but we'd love to take a look at it. So the next question is there a reference with the tools to evaluate the performance of the water devices as compared to using prescriptive text from product literature? So that's a great question, and I'm going to get into that, but that is definitely a direction we need to head into. So I appreciate that question, and I will be getting into that.